Kia ora, welcome everyone. We're just going to wait a sort of a minute or so before we get started and let everyone join us. There's always a flurry of people joining at the very start of a webinar. I think we're a minute after midday, so we'll get started shortly. No mai haere mai, welcome to Public Trust Wills Week webinar. I'll start with Public Trust Karakia, which speaks to our culture of care and our values. Tuia, tuia, tuia te taura tangata. Ki te aroha maurua, kia maia, kia marama, kia tapatahi. Te kākahu I te tangata, ki te kahu taurima. E mawai, ko te kura nui, ko te kura roa, haumi e, hui e, taiki e. Kia ora koutou, I'm Georgie Hills, Head of Communications at Public Trust, and I want to thank everyone who's joined us today for our special Wills Week webinar. When people think of making a will, they often think of Public Trust. We are New Zealand's largest provider of trustee and estate administration services. You know us as the Wills people. We support families taking care of a loved one's last wishes, parents appointing a guardian for their young kids, adult children wanting to ensure their mum and dad are looked after with the power of attorney. Of course, we love talking about wills, not just this week, but all year round. Today, we'll discuss why having a will matters, and we'll explore how your will can be a powerful tool to support charitable giving. We're spreading a goodwill message. Now, whether you're thinking about your whānau, your pets, your KiwiSaver, or your legacy, this session is for you. Maybe you're here because you need a will. Perhaps it's time to update the one you have, or you're curious about gifting to great causes in the community. We've got you covered today. With our panel, we'll talk about how your will is a powerful tool and how it can support the causes and the communities close to your heart. Our hope is that your future self will thank you for being here today. By the end of this webinar, we want you to come away feeling empowered and informed about the steps you can take to help ensure that the people and things you love are looked after. And stay tuned, I'll share details of a special offer too. But let's get into it. I'll introduce you to our expert panelists. Welcome to our wills experts, Public Trust Cassandra Fellows joining us from Tamaki Makaurau in Auckland, and Kerry Halliday from our Otatahi Christchurch office. We'll get the lowdown from Cassandra and Kerry on the importance of having an up-to-date will, things we need to think about when getting our life plans in place, and the options available to leave a charitable gift in your will. These two make the tricky stuff seem simple. We're in great hands. They'll offer lots of practical tips and they'll be happy to take your questions in this session. As I mentioned, this year for Wills Week, Public Trust is spreading a goodwill message. In our role, we get to see the extraordinary impact of ordinary New Zealanders who choose to leave a gift in their will to benefit others. And for many charities, bequests are one of the largest single sources of funding they receive. So we're delighted to be joined today by Rahul Watson-Govindon, Chief Executive of Philanthropy New Zealand. Kia ora. Who better than Rahul to talk about the profound impact that charitable giving can have on both the giver and the community? Now, we're happy to take your questions. You'll see at the top of the screen there is a Q&A button that's got the question mark on it. We'll answer them as we go, and we'll leave some time at the end of the session to discuss them with our panelists. Now, let's get started. Hi there, Cassandra. Can we start? Let's make sure everyone has a shared understanding of what we're talking about when we talk about a will. Wills 101. Give me the basics. What is a will and why is having a will so important?
Thank you so much, Georgie. It's lovely to be here with everyone. So a will is a legal document which plans for what you want happen to your assets when you pass away. It's also a place where you can include your funeral or burial wishes, and you can include sentimental items in your will, name a person who can make important decisions about your young children, and what you'd like happen to any of your pets. If you die without a will, administering your estate can take longer, and it can also cost more and be more difficult for your loved ones who are left behind and dealing with a really difficult time in their lives. It also means that your estate is administered in line with a piece of legislation, the Administration Act, which may not actually be what you would like to have happen to your assets. It can be more difficult for your family who may not know what your wishes were before you passed away or have conflicting ideas about how your estate should be administered.
Yeah, so wills give certainty. Look, is a will something you can do in person? Can you do it online? What are the options, Cassandra?
Really great question. So, we have customer centres up and down the country in New Zealand for all of our customers who prefer to meet with someone face to face to talk through their particular circumstances. But actually, the most popular way to create a will with public trust is through our online platform. Our basic wills online start from about $85, and our platform has had a lot of improvements to accessibility for people with different price points depending on your personal situations and the requirements of your will and family circumstances. So, using our online platform means that you can complete a will at a place and a time that suits you, but you'll still have access to our expert opinions, our digital trustees, who will be able to answer any questions that you do have as you work through these questionnaires. While self-service is a popular and convenient route, some more complicated situations do mean that people prefer a more personalized support and advice from our people, which can come from a public trust customer centre or even one of our in-house lawyers who can provide some additional guidance and comfort for you.
So self-serve plus get that backup support. That's great. I actually, the rise of online wills is a reminder. If there's one thing that's certain in life, is that things change. Kerry, let's talk about the importance of having an up-to-date will. How do you know when it's time to review your will?
Thank you, Georgie. Kia ora e hoa mā. So you have a will, ka pai, well done. But it's not a done and dusted deal. So when you make a will, life changes. And so it's good to review your will every 5 years. And that's to check if anything has changed. Are things still relevant that are in your will? Some important life events that may trigger the need to update your will could be a new addition to the whānau, a baby, a death of a loved one that you've named in your will, or a relationship change, separation, or a new relationship. Also, significant changes to your assets and liabilities. That could be like a new business, or you've purchased a property, or changes to property.
I'm just thinking 5 years ago, a lot has changed in my life. I think that's a lot of people be in the same boat. Hey, look, while we're talking about change, I've been reading that the government has signalled its intention to raise the probate threshold. Kerry, what is this probate threshold, and why is this change, is this change a good thing for families?
So the current minimum threshold where probate is required is $15,000. It's a necessary part of the estate administration process which involves an application to the High Court for the will to be recognised and approved legally. So raising the minimum threshold would mean that estates below that threshold wouldn't have to go through the probate process, which means whānau would be able to save costs and time on that. And so, yes, it is a good thing. What else?
Yeah.
And
it's great. Yeah, and I guess when you think about the average KiwiSaver balance is about 30,000 at the moment, you're still going to need a will in place, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, as you said, when we think about assets, what kind of assets do we have? Often KiwiSaver is overlooked. So that's in your own name, so that will form part of your estate. So the average KiwiSaver balance now is over $30,000. So that amount being over the minimum threshold triggers the requirement for probate. So it is recommended to get a will in place. And if you are thinking about making or updating a will, it would be a great time to consider how you could do some real good in the community as well.
Great point. Great point. Your will isn't just about stuff. It's not just about money, assets, and property. I know this is a topic close to Rahul's heart. In your work with Philanthropy New Zealand, Rahul, you see all the good done in communities by charities. Paint us a picture. What would New Zealand look like if charities weren't there?
Kia ora, and what a great question. Yeah, I'm very lucky, Georgie. I get to sit in a role where I get told of good news stories on a constant basis. So quite lucky. I open up the media, newspapers, and so on. It's not always the case. Look, in terms of charities in New Zealand, I sort of think of charities and the not-for-profit sector as being part of the infrastructure of what makes our country great. Without charities, New Zealand's social fabric would unravel. There'd be a lot more vulnerable people without essential support and community networks. The country would face a massive economic crisis and a vital volunteer workforce. Ultimately, the absence of these organisations will create so many service gaps that the government would be overwhelmed and we would be diminished as a country. So it's such an essential sector in our community.
We come at it from public trust because we, at the moment, as you know, our theme for Wills Week is your will is a powerful tool to support the charitable causes that are close to your heart, community causes that are close to your heart. And the topic of bequests is receiving a lot of attention thanks to the Great Wealth Transfer. It's a hot topic. It's estimated that over the next 25 years, New Zealand's baby boomers are going to pass on something like, I've heard the figure is $1.6 trillion in wealth to the next generation. Today, it's estimated charities receive about $320 million annually from gifts and wills. Rahul, I know New Zealanders are known to be generous, but are we missing a big opportunity here?
Yeah, look, I think, globally, our ranking in terms of the country goes up and down. We have been as high as third in the world. We've been as low as 25th in the world. So we go up and down. I think as a country, we can certainly do better. And there's some conversations that we're having with the government around how to free the generosity of New Zealand up even further. But going back to your question about bequests, bequests play such a powerful role. It's not just about the viability of those organisations that I mentioned before, but it's also about ensuring that the organisations that you care about can thrive in the environment that they're finding themselves in. And the environment of the now constantly changes. The 5 years ago, just over 5 years ago, we were in the middle of lockdowns of COVID. 5 years before that, we couldn't even perceive the global pandemic taking place. But through those years, the bequests that have been left behind by people have allowed those organisations to get through those short-term bumps. I think also about intergenerational wealth differently. It's not just about the money. It's about your values. It's about the impact you wish to make intergenerationally, not just while you're alive, but when you're no longer here. The contribution you've made to build this amazing country and the community that you're in, how might you be able to support it many years into the future? The money matters, but I think more than that, the articulation of why you care about certain organisations and what things you care about matters just as much. Your networks, the labour you give, the love you show through what you talk about, and your passions articulated through giving as well as your labour.
So many different ways to be generous.
I think that the organisations that you see constantly are under tremendous pressure, particularly in recent times, is not because they're struggling to execute their work or their strategy or their mission. It's because the demand on their work is high. And at the same time, I've noticed there's a lot of wonderful New Zealanders working in those charities who are highly committed, really trained, really passionate about the work they do. So they'd love to find more sustainable ways to make sure the mission is achieved. And a bequest and a legacy giving is such a neat way for New Zealanders to do that and support them.
Yeah, imagine the impact if New Zealanders were able to, we just increase that bequest amount even a little bit. Look, we've talked about what it means for charities to receive the gift, but sometimes what's overlooked is just flipping it from the other, looking at it from the different perspective, and that's about the positive impact for the person who's left a gift. What does it mean to the giver?
Yeah, look, that's a great question, and I think for me, I've been lucky enough to give some of my own money, but also meet a lot of people in my role now who've done the same. I think for me, it leaves a profound positive impact on the donor. It extends well beyond the act of giving itself. The benefits not just financial, but deeply personal, psychological, and social. There's you feel that there's studies, in fact, that show that giving charity has been scientifically proven to boost happiness and reduce your own stress. Acts of generosity activate the brain's reward centers, releasing feel good and chemicals like dopamine, but also leads to a greater sense of purpose and self-worth and overall life satisfaction. It's also a reinforcement of your personal values. It allows individuals to align their actions with their beliefs and see it played out in front of them. There's also a sense of legacy and community. So for many, leaving a gift is a way of creating a lasting legacy, a sense of being part of something larger than themselves, while they're surrounded by the chaos of the now, knowing that there's a feeling of connectedness to a community that is beyond, that is connected to the future and the future well-being of the community as well. So I think for me, that any amount that you can leave behind is meaningful to a charity, because for that charity, it's a validation of the fact that there are people like you that care around the mission and vision of that charity. And I'll just mention a couple that sort of came up recently. And it's deeply personal. So for me, it's connected to personal stories. So Neonatal Trust have received some legacy gifts over the many years. And for me, it's deeply personal because I've had many friends who've had premature babies, and the Neonatal Trust works provide support to whānau of premature, sick, full-term babies as well. The Malaghan Institute of Medical Research, key areas of research being in cancer, asthma, allergy, gut health, etc. But they're doing amazing work in CAR T-cell research at the moment. It's going to transform how we do cancer therapy. And I've got, and many of you on the call will have many family and friends who have been affected by cancer. So there are organisations out there that will absolutely welcome your bequest, no matter how large or small it is, because they're doing really important work for our future.
I think, Rahul, I think just playing that back, I'm really struck by that deep personal connection that you can have with the cause that you support. And actually, I'd love to bring Kerry back in at this point, because I think, let's discuss around how cultural beliefs and family traditions play a significant role in estate planning decisions, because they shape perspectives on inheritance, family roles, and wealth distribution, which of course influences estate planning. Kerry, are there specific things Māori will makers should consider when it comes to making a will?
Aye, there is. And because I had the good fortune of being able to walk in two worlds, Te Ao Māori as well as Te Ao Tauiwi or non-Māori, this could apply to non-Māori as well. It's a good idea. The will is a good place where you can specify your funeral wishes, and like, what do you want to happen with your body? Is it going to a specific place? Will there be a burial or cremation? Or would you rather leave it to your whānau to decide what's to happen? And speaking of whānau, it's also good to kōrero with them, or the people who will be dealing with your body about this. So they may have other ideas that may not align with yours. So specifying your wishes in your will may save disagreements and further heartache within the whānau. Another thing to consider is that you have the opportunity to support your favourite kaupapa by gifting funds to your local community, kura, or charitable trust, charity. And this donation could make such a lasting impact, as Rahul mentioned. It's also intergenerational, that donation could be.
Thanks, Kerry. So, like what I'm hearing is that people can create estate plans that meet legal requirements and honour their values and traditions at the same time. While I have you here, I understand Māori land interests can be complex for whānau. Can you talk to that for us?
Yeah, so generally, Māori land shares is another part where people can record their wishes. It is good to capture this in your will, but we point out that succession is managed by the Māori Land Court. Another complexity is a whānau may have whāngai relationships, and that having these things noted in your will are really important, as current legislation doesn't account for this type of whānau relationship, whāngai.
Just like staying on that topic of whāngai for a second, that's where a child is raised by someone other than their birth parents, right? So what's important for people to know when it comes to your will?
So in Te Reo, we call this whāngai, that type of relationship. And so current legislation doesn't formally recognise whāngai children as a will maker's child, unless they've been formally adopted in. So this is why it's so important for Māori to have a will to ensure their whāngai doesn't miss out and are accounted for. So this can be achieved by naming your whāngai child in the will.
It's not an area I'm familiar with, so I really appreciate the insight. Now, this year for Wills Week, our theme is focused on charitable gifts in a will. Every year, Public Trust manages hundreds of bequests and charitable grants made possible by New Zealand's will makers. Cassandra, you've helped, I think we counted up hundreds of New Zealanders create a will over the years. When it comes to leaving a gift in a will, what trends are we seeing?
Yeah, it's wonderful to work with so many different New Zealanders really up and down the country and see the ways that people can, make sure their families are accounted for in their different documents. So actually, did you know 7% of wills with public trust in the last 3 years have included some form of gift to a charity, with the average value being about $800? The most common types of charities we see provided for in our wills are focused on people's health and well-being, ambulance services, and animal welfare as well.
Rahul, I'd love you to weigh in here. What's your take on this? Does that bear out trends you're seeing on in the philanthropic sector?
Yeah, sometimes the word philanthropy can weigh on people. They imagine wealthy billionaires with money, but actually, from what you just heard, and also what from looking around you, charities do so much with so little. There's certainly more to give, but it shows that you don't have to have a lot to make a difference in the everyday situation of a charity.
That's right. 800. I reflect on $800. I know it's going to make an impact. It's going to be gratefully received by a charity, but it is a modest amount, relatively speaking. So, you don't need to be a huge, titan of industry that even, any amount is going to be gratefully received. Kerry, I know that there are a few ways to leave gifts in your will, and I would love you to shed a little bit, take us through what those key ways that you can leave a gift in your will.
Sure. So there are a couple of ways you can gift. So one is called a specific gift of property, such as cash, asset, a taonga, and you could gift this to a person or people you care about, or a charity or cause, for example, leaving $5,000 to the SPCA, or leaving a car to a local high school or charity, things like that. And then there is the residual gifts. So after gifts in a will have been distributed, you can specify the residual, for example, a percentage share of the remaining funds in the estate to go to a named charity or cause. For example, you'd like to provide a residual gift of 10% to your local marae.
Yeah, nice. So those two things, specific or residual. And we have more information and resources on our website, publictrust.co.nz, where you can watch videos and you can get some really helpful explainers on ways that you can gift in your will. Rahul, for those who want to make the best impact, how do charities like to be remembered in wills?
Yeah, that's a really important question. And maybe I'll just break it down into 3 or 4 different parts. So first, you sort of need to consider the type of gift. And the easiest type of gift, if you like, is to leave a cash gift. These are typically settled first, and it's quite clear how much it is. And for a charity receiving it, it's quite clear how much they're going to receive. But you might want to consider a percentage. So, if you've got assets, if you're asset rich and cash poor, giving a percentage of your total net wealth might be more meaningful. It also allows for the up and downs of the market to take hold, and so that you don't lose value in the future. The second thing I'd sort of say is charities like giving for greatest needs and unrestricted giving. In other words, you might have a passion as a donor for a specific project, but leaving gift for general purposes, or where the need is most needed, provides the charity with the flexibility to use the funds to address the most urgent and critical challenges at the time that the gift is received. This ensures that the gift's impact is maximized, especially for organizations whose work and priorities may evolve over many years. And then thirdly, and this is perhaps some more really practical sort of advice, there are 3 bits to this. It's really important, if you can, and if you're willing to, please inform the charity while you're still alive of the fact that you're going to do this. And it's not required that you do that, but it can be a meaningful step. It allows them to thank you personally and helps them get on with long-term planning. But some charities may even offer to show you how your future gift could be used, so giving you some peace of mind. And as I was talking before, that dopamine hit of a generosity. The second most important thing is that you got to talk to your family. So it's not mandatory, but really advise you to talk to your family about your intentions, and it can help them understand and support your wishes as well. And then lastly, and this has been really relevant to many people on the call, please do consult a professional. Many of the folks on the call from Public Trust, for example, they have spoken to many New Zealanders over many years, and they can really help you navigate your thoughts and put them into a legal action and a legal document that can be utilised when you're no longer alive. So a lawyer or estate planning professional or public trust professionals can really help you draft your will and reflect your wishes accurately and ensure that your gift has maximum legal and practical impact.
Yeah, nice. I'm hearing, a theme I'm hearing from you here, Rahul, is like, let's have it out in the open. Let's have a conversation. It shouldn't be a surprise. And that helps everyone. Cassandra, I'll bring you back in here, because we've talked about the fact that forgiving any amount, big or small, can make a big impact and is really gratefully received. But if we're to talk about someone who might have the wherewithal to leave a larger amount to a community cause that's important to them, how can they do that?
So charitable trust is a really good option for those New Zealanders. Charitable trusts hold and protect your assets specifically for charitable purposes, so that you can leave a really lasting legacy that makes a difference, providing ongoing support even after you are no longer with us. Charitable trusts are generally set up within the lifetime of a will maker, and you can decide the purpose of that trust and who you'd like to benefit, as well as how you would like them to benefit from that trust. Those instructions can be very specific, can include how much you would like to be distributed or granted each year, or can be broader and left to the discretion of the trustees managing that charitable trust. These charitable trusts generally work best when there is enough money to allow for ongoing charitable giving and capital growth. So, generally speaking, at least $300,000 as an initial contribution to a charitable trust is what we would recommend. And just for New Zealanders to be realistic in the gifting in their wills. Your will should only be able to support charities in the way that you're able to.
Yeah, nice. I remember speaking to Rahul. Could you remind me, Rahul, how many charities are registered in New Zealand every month or fortnight? You had a startling number. I thought it was really remarkable, and I think other people will too.
Yeah, and I went looking for as a data nerd looking for data, and I spent many hours going into a spiral. We've got 29,000 charities in New Zealand, give or take, and I say give or take because, as you say, there's approximately 30 charities registered every fortnight. Unfortunately, about 14 of those are deregistered in the same sort of time scale. That's taking a look at the last 15 years in New Zealand. And it's not to say that's going to be a constant regular for the future. It's just to take a look at a certain point in our history. That's been the stat.
We're in the same place, Rahul. We're data nerds here too, so it's great to have that information. Look, I'd love to go to the Q&A because we're getting some fantastic questions coming through from people who have joined us on the call. Cassandra, I'm going to take this. I'm going to give this one to you. This is from Doug. He said, I have a will which was drawn up by public trust many years ago. He says about 30 years. Is there any chance public trust would be able to find it in our archives, and what would we charge to update it?
That's a really great question, Doug, and good that you're thinking about a will that was done so long ago. It is really common for wills to go through the probate process that are 30 years or even much older, I've seen. Absolutely. So if you've had your will drafted with public trust, at that time you either would have taken your will away with you, or if you've left it with us, it will be in one of our offices closest to you, and we'll be able to retrieve that from our archives and walk you through the update process. As I mentioned earlier, our online wills start at $85. But if you're really wanting to sit down with a trustee, talk through your old will, what's changed and what you'd like to update, then I do recommend getting in touch with one of our customer centres who can walk you through that process.
Doug, you can just head to our website, get our contact details, give us a call, and we'll sort you out. That's fantastic. I have a question from HC. HC, thanks for this question. Can a will in New Zealand include non-New Zealand assets? And if yes, how will it be handled when one passes away? Now, wills experts, hands up. Who wants to take that one?
I can jump in, Kerry, and if you like. Yes, absolutely. Your will can deal with international assets. It's really important that you specify that in your will, that these instructions apply not just to your assets in New Zealand, but apply to those in another country or generally across the world if you happen to have assets in different pockets. How that administered looks a little bit different between different countries. Quite often, Kerry-Ann talked about the probate process, so having to get permission from the court to administer an estate. And often that process needs to reoccur in the country where your assets are as well. So you would go through that probate process in New Zealand. And then if public trust were your executors, we would liaise with lawyers overseas to get that probate granted in another country. Different countries have very different rules when it comes to wills and estate administration. So sometimes we require some expert opinions from solicitors in those countries to make sure that we properly understand any additional requirements that we might have to go through in order to collect those assets for your beneficiaries.
Interesting. So it adds a layer of complexity, but the good news is that you can consult experts. People are there to help you navigate through that. Yeah, nice. You don't need to necessarily get your passport updated and travel overseas to get it all done. No, good. Okay, great. We did have a question around updating your online will. I know it's here in the Q&A. Oh, could you please speak to the process of and the price of updating a will that's been created online? Cassandra, you're on a bit of a roll with online wills. Do you want to take that one?
Absolutely. I think one of the greatest things about our online platform is that once you've created a will online, you are able to go back in and you have that previous will there to refer to an update. So you don't have to go through the process of rewriting your entire will and having the same discussions again. You can really just tweak the elements you'd like to change. It is very important to remember that when you make changes to your online will, that making changes in the questionnaire itself won't be legally binding. It's important that that will is still printed and re-signed and re-witnessed to make sure that all your updated wishes can be followed through. In terms of pricing, I might have to hand over to one of my colleagues because I don't have that number to top of mind. But our online platform is the most accessible for New Zealanders in terms of if you're wanting a really brief update to your will, not a big rework, and you don't need a lot of advice, online is the best way to make those small changes without it being too much of a price impact.
Big believers in price transparency at Public Trust, so I know that we publish our price list online, so you can publictrust.co.nz. It's really easy to navigate that, so you know what what's in store for you. We had a question around superannuation accrued overseas. So can a will reflect that if you have assets overseas like super, a lot of New Zealanders might have spent some time on OE or they lived overseas before coming to New Zealand. How is the estate management, the estate process managed when there are assets overseas that need to be sorted out?
To jump on this one?
Yeah, I'll jump on this one. Cassandra, you've been doing such a fantastic job in answering the questions and covering it all. So basically, I'm going to answer this just how Cassandra answered the international assets. So this is an international asset if you receive a UK pension or anything like that. So the same thing, you can get your will to deal with overseas or international assets as well. So the estate administration side of that would be we would apply to the country as Cassandra explained and possibly go through the same process depending on the amount or threshold for the probate. So the asset itself may be under their probate threshold. So we would still collect that asset if we were the executor for your estate.
Yeah, nice. Well, there's a question that comes up quite a lot, I know, in my time at Public Trust. And so, Kerry, I'm going to put this one to you since you're on my site now. You know, you've been letting Cassandra take the questions. Now I'm going to share the load. That's what good colleagues do. Leanne asks, can we write our own wills and do they need to be witnessed by someone? And I think that's sort of sometimes we get questions around DIY wills and whether they're legit and they stand up.
Yeah,
Kerry.
you're spot on with that, Georgie. So yes, you can, but is it going to be legally viable? Is it going to be past the High Court? Are they going to approve it? So it's up in the air. It is advisable to make a will using the right channels. Could be in person with a lawyer or with an estate planning agency like Public Trust or online platform. So people do make a will that way. Perhaps if you have assets less than the probate threshold, it's fine. Write it down. Write down what you've got and your wishes and remembering your loved ones. Yeah, it's a start.
start. Cassandra, anything to add there?
Oh, I think I will actually. Carrie Ann makes a really good point. A lot of people choose to write wills themselves, but it is up to the High Court to determine if that will is valid. And unfortunately, that process only happens once you're already gone. So when we talk about seeing a professional like Public Trust to get your will drafted, if you think about the price, $85 for an online will compared to when those wills go through the High Court, and if the worst happens and there's a challenge to that will, or maybe there's a small little legally you didn't know about when drafting that document, can be really costly to your estate and very, very time consuming for your beneficiaries. So if the will is rejected in court, it means your beneficiaries, your family who you've nominated, or the charity who will be receiving your gifts, they may not receive the shares that you had outlined, or if they do, they end up having to pay a lot more in legal fees and wait a whole lot more time for that to happen. So a little bit more time and cost now can actually save you and your family a lot down the track. Yeah.
So a valid will can save cost and complexity for your family and ultimately free up the court's time as well.
Yeah.
Actually, we've got another question, because I think it raises a question. Sometimes the reason people want to do a DIY will is just a concern about cost. And we do get questions around the costs of it, not just making a will, but estate administration. And if a customer comes to, say, Public Trust and has an estate that needs administering, what can they expect in terms of an indication of the fees and charges?
That's a really good question, Georgie. As you mentioned, we really value fee transparency. And so one of the first steps in all of our estate administration is to clearly lay out what we will be doing and what the charges are associated with that. So depending on the complexity of your family situation, the number of assets you have, perhaps you have assets overseas, that price point will be a little bit different, which is why it's really important in your will to document all of your assets really clearly, because that can save you time in the administration costs down the line.
Yeah. And just to add to that, you may be appointing a whānau member to be the executor of your will, handling the estate administration. So there are services such as Public Trust that can assist the executor that you've appointed in parts of the estate, such as applying to the court for probate, assisting with that aspect of the estate. Yeah.
Many families who come to us, they want to do right by the loved one who's passed away. Yeah. There's some dad wisdom here that's been shared by Melanie. She says, my dad always says, I don't have a will. You get everything being the only child. Is dad right in that? Does Melanie need to worry about her inheritance?
There's a lot of complex situations there. So the Administration Act is a piece of legislation which lays out if a person passes away without a will, who gets what, basically. And we have a sort of hierarchy of relationships, depending if you have a spouse, if you have children, and then maybe if you have brothers and sisters and so on. It kind of passes through that hierarchy. But when you don't have a will, this also will increase your estate administration costs. So your executor, your administrator, will have to apply to the court for a different form of permission than probate to administer that estate. It also leaves your estate much more open to claims. So people who believe that they may be entitled to your dad's assets, maybe they think that a promise was made some years ago, maybe he's been in a relationship with someone that they weren't financially intermingled, but that person believes they're entitled to a portion of that estate. So once you're gone, you can't advocate for yourself, and it's very hard for your family to try and advocate for you when you're not there and you haven't put that on paper. It's hard to demonstrate your wishes when you're no longer here. So I would definitely recommend having a will. It just it's that protection in place for your dad as well, for his peace of mind. And it will make a difficult time when he does pass away much easier, because you won't have to be thinking of the legalese. You'll get to think about your family.
Yeah, it can be really hard decision making in a time of grief. So having a will in place is such an act of love. Sharon's got a question that I would love to put to Rahul, which is, where can you find information about charities in your community or New Zealand? Rahul, where should Sharon start?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I mean, I think maybe it's a question I don't ask myself because I come across them all the time in the day job, but actually it's a very practical question. I think, look, I'm going to give you the really practical, simple way of doing it, which is your first point of call. We're very lucky to have access to, a thorough Google search or other search engine search. Just put in some interest that you like, and then put in charity and see what comes up. That's normally these days I think it's a pretty good starting step. And then you might have one or two charities that come up that pique your interest. Then take a look at their annual report. I know it sounds a bit administrative, but yeah, you might find that the splash page that you land on tells you something, and then you take a look at the annual report. There might be other things within that charity that really pique your interest, and you might want to pick the phone up and talk to them, or flip them an email and ask them some questions. So that's the real practical way of doing it, if you wanted to do it in your own confines of your own home. The other way that I recommend to people now is talk to their friends and family, and if you have children, talk to your children, because you might find that they have some interest, so they have some insights into some charities and organizations that they really care about, and it's sort of a neat way to start having conversations around your legacy and your bequests that perhaps would not otherwise start.
I mean, it's a great question. The JB Ware Bequests report came out earlier this year. Public Trust collaborated on that report, and the big takeaway for me, Rahul, was the need to normalise conversations about giving. I know I talk to my kids about the charities I'd like to support. Turns out they do not have any problem imagining me dead, which I thought it might get weird with my kids. It didn't. But I think a lot of families can find conversations about death and money quite confronting. Do you have any tips for us for navigating that conversation?
Yeah, I've been telling people, if you don't want to have a conversation about death and money, then don't have a conversation about death and money. Have a conversation about your values as a family, or your values as an individual. How do you wish to, and how do you currently contribute to the community around you? What really matters to you? What's your North Star as an individual, as a dad, as a mum, as a auntie, as an uncle, as a friend? What's stuff that you really care about? And I think if you're parents of young children, it's a neat way to, I think, to educate children into contributing to the well-being of the community around them, making them aware of the community around them, and giving them a sense of agency of contributing positively to the community around them at a young age. So it's not really about your death or about your money. It's about the future that you wish to see for them and for others in the community when you're no longer there. And some of that will be your money, but most of that money is a manifestation of your values and of the future that you wish to see. So have that conversation instead.
Yeah, the writer of the Bequests report, a guy called John McLeod, he says something really interesting. He talks about the family balance sheet, that someone's life is not just measured in your assets and your property and it's also value. It's your values. It's the things that are important to you. It actually leads to a really great question that's come through from David, because we know that there's always a lot of things, people that are important to you and causes that are important to you. David's asked, is it advisable to limit the number of charities and family members in terms of administration costs? So I think this is limit the number of charities and family members in your will. And he's got a question around the chargeable time. So I think there's maybe Cassandra, I might put this at you. If there's more beneficiaries in a will, is it going to cost someone more when it comes to the estate administration?
Short answer is yes. So the more beneficiaries you have, the more people your executor has to locate, has to obtain their bank details for, and has to keep them updated as they administer your estate. Say if you had a property that needed to be sold, if you have 10 different people who will benefit from that sale, your executor needs to be in touch with all of those different people to make sure they're well informed, they agree with the sale price, maybe the settlement date. So more people can mean more cost. So I think it's about considering the value of your estate against that amount of people. You know, an estate with multiple properties and share portfolios, the cost of liaising with those different beneficiaries will be quite a small percentage of that estate. But if your estate is more modest, maybe you have a family home and a small bank account, you might think about gifting you can do in your lifetime and leave your estate administration to those core charities or core family members that you feel would benefit most from that interaction.
I imagine it's just personal for every person, right? And your will reflect that. Tell me, as you speak, I'm intrigued, Kerry and Cassandra. What is the largest number of beneficiaries that you've ever administered an estate for? Like, are we getting over 100? Would that be ridiculous?
It's not ridiculous, but I have worked on an estate or assisted with an estate. I think it had 19 and counting beneficiaries. When I say and counting, we had to search for possible family members and beneficiaries. So it was an open will, open class will. So yeah, and that's quite a lot of beneficiaries.
Yeah, I think I've maybe had, I think 40 is the most I've seen. And actually, there's a very good lesson in that estate because this was someone who passed away without a will. And so they didn't have a spouse or children. And so what it means is we had to go through generations of people overseas and finding people that this person had actually never met, but they would benefit from their estate because without a will, there was no way for us to know where the assets should have gone.
Yeah.
It's incredible. There's a story in the Herald that's just run with one of our colleagues who's an ear hunter, and she talks about the experience of going, searching globally for beneficiaries of wills. It's a fascinating story on Jade Winnikare. A couple of quick fire questions before we finish, because I'd love to get as many of these questions from the panel. Kerry, I do think you answered this, but just to recap, we've got a question from HC around who sets the threshold for probate, that 15,000 amount for probate, and is there a possibility the amount will change in the future?
Oh, fantastic. Thank you for your question. So yes, the threshold is set by the government. And it is currently $15,000, and the government have recently indicated that they will be increasing that threshold.
Yeah, nice. And Lulu has a question, Cassandra. This is one for you. Sometimes things get complex and there are issues with wills for some family members. So what is the process for contesting a will? Asked Lulu. Do many people go through this experience?
Yeah, I think this comes back to the importance of having these conversations while you're still alive, because it's very difficult sometimes to be caught by surprise in a close family member's will when you weren't expecting the administration in that way. You are able to lodge a claim against a will in New Zealand under a few pieces of legislation. For example, if you believe you have been promised something in a person's estate in exchange for goods or services, spouses or partners are able to claim on an estate, or children or other dependent family members may be able to raise a claim. Public trust, we don't raise claims ourselves. Our job is to protect the will and try and honour our will maker's wishes as best we can. So people looking to raise a claim should seek independent legal advice. And as quickly as possible, there's a small window of time when an estate can be challenged. So as soon as you become aware of a will that you think doesn't reflect the will maker's wishes or the promises they've made, getting that legal advice as soon as possible is a very good idea.
Great, thanks, Cassandra. Now, I'll change the vibe a little bit from contested wills to how your will can be a powerful tool, because during Wills Week, we've been sharing good will stories on our social channels. We've got interviews with will makers and videos with people and communities who have directly benefited from gifts and wills. I just encourage everyone to go and check them out. They'll give you all the feels, and we're releasing new content every day. I've loved hearing stories from the likes of Te Whare Whiro in Christchurch, Orange Sky, IHC, Kibosh, and Little Stars. So many incredible stories of the impact of legacy gifting. To our panel, if we could just close out with your favourite gift and will story. Kerry, could you begin?
Oh, me? Oh, thank you. Well, it's kind of a favourite opportunity so I've had the honour of assisting people with estate planning who require an interpreter. And what I think is really cool about that is English may not be their first language, or they may be blind or deaf, but it is a voice. So it's a platform for their voice and able to remember and provide for their loved ones by documenting their final thoughts and wishes, whether it be gifting a taonga or supporting their favourite kaupapa or charity, and having the opportunity to make a lasting difference. So that's my favourite thing about assisting people with making a will.
Yes, your will gives you a voice. It's beautiful. Rahul.
Oh man, so many. I'll give you a recent one I actually just stumbled across this morning. I was talking to someone from the Royal New Zealand Foundation for the Blind, now called Blind Low Vision NZ. And they received a bequest from a woman named Elsie, and her gift was specifically for the care and training of guide dogs, which was a testament to her love for her own guide dog, who had provided her with many years of independence. I thought it was a neat example of giving, I thought quite creatively, to a love of animals, also giving to something that's deeply impacted her as well.
Wonderful. Love that, Elsie. Cassandra.
If I think about a really meaningful will, I think about sometimes we leave our will planning until something happens to us. Maybe we find out we're sick. And I've had the privilege of being able to work with people and draft their wills, meet their families while they're still alive. And then once they pass away, we're already familiar with the family. They know who we are. We've had a lot of those technical financial discussions before. And then after the person has passed away, you can really just step into that relationship, and people can leave public trust to it. We can get all of that out of the way so that you can focus on grieving and coming together as a family. And getting to meet people ahead of time is really, it's a privilege.
A wonderful note to end on. Just a massive thank you to our panelists, Rahul, Cassandra, and Kerry. And good news for you. Thank you for joining us. We've got a special offer for you today. We're going to post the details on the chat. So if you use the code we provide, you'll be able to get that will ticked off your to-do list at a fantastic price. And today we heard all about the need to have a will in place, and that it's easy and achievable, and we can tap into advice and support from the experts who are here to help. What resonated with you? We'd love your feedback. You can put it in the chat or send us a message. Just a final thank you to everyone for joining us. You can find more information on publictrust.co.nz. Follow us on social and you'll see some of those remarkable stories we've been talking about. Ka kite. Goodbye.